Hello and welcome to the Larger Than Necessary First Player Token Podcast, episode 38.
Hello.
My name is Chris.
I'm Euan.
And we are without Pawel today, who's been beckoned down to London, I think.
I like the idea of being
Just
someone in London standing with arm outstretched,
beckoning
sort of
Pawel
come
on.
hither.
This is following our new format. We're on a board games episode now.
Cranked out another episode.
That's it.
In a week.
So we've got 3 board games to talk about. Well, we're going to give Pawel his chance to talk about an RPG this episode, but you know.
Oh well, yeah.
Every time he gets called away somewhere, we're like, you want to talk about an Oh, sorry, pal.
We're definitely going to find time today.
Yeah. In fact, we're going to leave a 15-minute gap at the end of this episode for Pawel to come back later and fill it in.
If you at home can just fill it.
Make your own review.
Yeah. Put it in your tape deck and record Elton John songs from the other tape deck.
Do you know anybody that's still got a tape deck?
I don't know. I've got some tapes.
Oh, I've got tapes. I've got a Sting album.
I bet you do.
It's not mine. It's not mine.
You've got to bring on the night.
Yeah.
You don't have Dream of the Blue Turtles.
I just found it in here somewhere. Like I don't know where it came from. Right, so enough about Sting. Let's get on with some board games. So, what we've been playing, Euan?
Well, it's the new one from Fantasy Flight, New Angeles.
It certainly is.
Which is a semi-cooperative game set in the Android universe. And it's semi-cooperative. I'm not entirely sure how to describe it. The phrase that keeps coming back to me is pandemic for dickheads. And it's not in a bad way. I don't mean that negatively, funnily enough. It's a good game.
Yep.
But yeah, essentially your players take on the role of various corporate CEOs.
In a cyberpunk.
Oh, it's a cyberpunk universe. Yeah, if you're not familiar with the Android universe, there's been a few games set. We've talked about one of them, haven't we?
Yeah.
I'm forgetting the name of it now. Netrunner.
We've talked about Netrunner.
The card game. And there's the original Android, which is a sort of strange detective game.
Yeah, that original Android game, I have that game, and I've got really mixed feelings about it. It's one of those games that I'm not entirely sure that I can play again. It's just so long.
Yeah, and it does kind of... It feels like it is a one-play sort of thing, because there's a lot of like narrative aspects to it. I suppose you could just keep going through trying to sort of... Because there's different ways your storyline can go. I mean, it's a strange thing to put in a board game that size, but... It
is really thick with narrative.
Oh, yeah.
Like, the whole game is basically just narrative-driven, but it's like... I don't know if maybe the experience that I've had with it is that I've played it with people that are just not that interested in that kind of thing. And it's just, it's fallen a bit flat maybe because of that.
It's a long game, and if it doesn't land with everybody that's playing it, I think it's kind of... It does feel like a bit of a slog.
But anyway, it's a cyberpunk detective story, basically, where a lot of it is about the character you're playing and how they fit into the story.
Aye.
So... Yeah, back to New Angeles though. So this is set in the Android University city of New Angeles, which is in America.
Yeah, I'm guessing is the major city of this cyberpunk world.
Yeah, it's where the stock is, and the stock is the space elevator that goes to the moon.
Love a space elevator.
So yeah, this game's set there.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, essentially, all your players are meant to be working together to manage the affairs of New Angeles. But they're all trying to sort of cream off as much capital as they possibly can while doing so, without basically wrecking the place to the point that the government has to step in and start running things and confiscate all their assets.
Which I find that part of the game particularly amusing.
Oh, yeah,
the fact that the government's just watching these corporations drive this city into the ground for their own greedy purposes.
Yeah. We're not sure whether this game's trying to make a point. We don't want to put words in the creator's mouth.
I remember we talked about that briefly when we were playing it, actually. Just like, is this game making some weird political point?
Aye. Well, it's come up a lot recently, the power of corporations and everything like that. And it certainly makes a compelling case for statism and the retaining of nations and governments over corporations running everything. Essentially, you have a track on the board for there's what do you call it? A risk. I keep wanting to say.
Yes, they call it the threat track.
Threat. Yeah. It's always threat in these games.
It's always threat in these games. It's a fantasy flight game. There's going to be threat in it.
Aye. So if the threat level gets up to 25, that's basically game over.
Yeah.
But you do have everybody sort of starts the game with an objective, so it messes up the cooperative element of the game pretty much from the get-go.
Yeah.
So your players are sort of taking the role of your sort of various CEOs of the different corporations of the Android world. We've got Global Sec,
the security company,
security corporation, Jinteki, who do cloning.
The Jinteki make the clones.
Science. Yes. The Wayland Consortium.
The Wayland Consortium, who are a mysterious, leaderless organisation.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know much about them. We didn't get them
play
out
with them,
game.
yeah, but
the NBN.
Oh, the news network.
Yeah, I don't know what that is an acronym for.
I can't actually remember. Yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head. Maybe look that one up.
Okay. And Haas Bioroid, which they basically run.
They make the androids.
They make the androids and they control them as well. And Melange Mining is the other one there, who are sort of basically they seem to have what I looked at from their card, because we didn't get them out during the game, as they sort of favour a more general approach. Because essentially what you do is you're drawing various cards, and your faction, whatever your corporation, will favour one, because obviously media being one of the card things, that'll be.
There's 5 card types.
Pick up more. Yeah, you got 5 there, and then Melange Mining can basically sort of.
They take a mixture.
They take whatever they want, basically.
What are the card types? You got labour, security, media,
biotech and construction.
Yep, that's it.
Yeah, because that's why I was wondering about the Wayland thing, because they seem to favour construction. So are they just like a leaderless organisation, just covering the face of the earth in sort of suburban homes?
I mean, the thing is, I don't know too much about the Android universe, but what I gather about the Wayland Consortium is that they're almost cult-like.
Yeah.
And I don't know exactly what their agenda is, but it feels really like sinister.
See, this is where we need Pawel for the. There are novels set in the Android universe. There's a couple now, isn't there?
Yeah, there's a few novels. Aye.
Yeah. Probably expands on this stuff a bit.
I got halfway through one of them before I just had to stop reading it. I mean, it's one of these things, It's like when they make these people write these novels for these already set up universes. Yeah. Some of them they're not great. Let's face it.
Well, I remember always you used to go into Waterstones and they generally have a big table of kind of landfill sci-fi.
Yeah,
and you could just pretty much at a glance tell what was going to be just nonsense and what was going to be worth reading. There's a lot of it, I suppose, and especially in kind of like adapting known properties.
I'm sure if Pawel was here, he would disagree with me massively, actually. I'm pretty sure he's read some of those novels,
Aye, well, I'd expect so. Well, if you like Pawel and you're interested in the games, then there is that extended universe.
The one that I read was it was almost like a sort of, like they were trying to do this sort of film noir style detective story, like the original Android game kind of is. Mm-hmm. But it just, I don't know, it didn't work for me. I mean, maybe it's a great book and I've just got terrible taste, but.
Well, I don't know. I don't see it like popping up on any Times reading list or anything like that. So I don't know. We'll go with your recommendation for the moment. I'm not about to pick it up anyway. I've got too much else to read. But back to the game.
Yeah, back to the game.
A literary detour there. So basically, keeping the threat down is your main objective as the corporations. And threat sort of is increased. There's various ways. The main thing is sort of keeping up with demand, which has to be met every, is it 2 rounds? You basically play 6 rounds.
Yeah, I mean, the whole structure of the game is a bit strange. I think that was the most confusing part about it. Yeah. Because there was rounds and then there was player turns and stuff like that. And the number of player turns in a round changed from round to round.
But that was kind of set up by the game. That would be,
yeah, and it was all determined by cards that came out and stuff. That would, like every couple of rounds you would draw an event card, and that would tell you how many player turns would be in the next round, and so on and so forth. Right. But yeah, that was a pretty confusing bit. But yeah, basically every couple of whole rounds, you had to have met this demand thing.
And if you don't, and it's even just one of the, because there's 5 resources there. It's like data and credits, and
tech and credits and consumables, and
so these 5 even if one of them doesn't meet demand, you're going to get hit with however much threat, and generally that's going to be the highest amounts you're going to get around those cards. There would between about 5 and 7 that we encountered. But there are other ways of getting threat. There's diseased areas, and if you look at the areas around the map, there's about 8 or so. Is there 10?
There's 10 districts in the game. Yeah.
And each one sort of either produces they all have some resource that they'll produce, and you have to essentially extract that resource from there. Some of them will sort of be quarantined. They'll have an outbreak of disease. If anything, and now I was a bit unclear on this during the game. Actually, was it anything moving? Is it in any figure? So including
so I mean, we haven't talked about the actual main thing of the game, which is making the deals and stuff like that. But if there's a card that you use through a deal, that affects a district, that has an illness counter in it, and that's if a token moves in or a token moves out.
Right.
Then the threat will go up.
Okay.
That's how that works.
All right. Okay. Well, we'll probably get onto that actually. See, that's another thing I'm having difficulty describing. The kind of the main mechanic of the game is bidding on. You're essentially putting forward city ordinances that will have certain effects, but also certain good effects and certain negative effects. And it's sort of weighing out like what's worth doing. One player, the sort of lead player, places one of the cards down as their offer for what they think they should be doing, and then the player opposite them takes they play a counter offer.
Well, they can. They don't have to.
Yeah.
If they don't, it goes round the table. Everybody gets a chance to make a counter offer. It becomes more expensive to make a counter offer in terms of you have to start throwing cards away if there's already a counter offer in there. But yeah, so these are the cards that you're picking up. These are the labour cards, the security cards, the media cards, and they've got various things on them. Now, I mean, what we should have really said is that the districts at the game board, they'll have various things in them. It's not just illnesses and stuff. You've got like street punks, as we were calling them, the human first people who basically they are trying to cause riots. You've got organised crime. They're just like trying to take the stuff that the districts produce, they're trying to take that for themselves. So if there's organised crime units in a district, that district is not going to be able to produce their main thing that round. You've also got riots and strikes break out. So if unrest goes to a strike, then basically that district is not going to produce at all. Same thing with power outages. I think that's the main things, isn't it?
Yeah, no, that's you got your strikes, power outages, and the units that sort of go in there.
But you've also got 3 androids. So there's 3 androids on the board.
Yeah.
And those are the things that actually exploit the districts. Now, only the districts that have androids in them, they're the only ones that are going to produce anything that round.
Yeah.
And that's how you're meeting your demand, basically. So you're having to use your androids. But androids, because they're taking people's jobs, cause districts to go into unrest and eventually will go into strike, and that's why having human first figures in certain areas is bad, because they skip the unrest stage. If there's a human first figure there and you exploit it with an android, it goes straight to strike and stops producing, and then you have problems. So these action cards, you're basically putting these forward, and these might have some things on them like, get rid of 2 human first figures on the board or something like that, and then something else might happen. But then, it's like you say, there could be bad things on these cards as well. Generally, the much more effective cards, in terms of getting rid of things, will have some sort of negative effect as well. So it might be a case of you're getting rid of, illness on the board, but also increasing something else instead. Like you're maybe putting a whole district into outage by doing that, or into full unrest or something like that. So when you're making these offers, I mean, it's just like you're basically putting down an offer that and you want to do something that's basically going to let you skim something off the top. So this is where the corporation powers come into it.
Well, yeah, because there's a few. The corporation powers and also your secret objectives.
Yeah.
Will affect that because there's 6 secret objectives, is it, or is there 7? And then because there's essentially
there's 7.
Yeah, because
but,
you've got one that's about basically pretty much all of them are beat a certain corporation.
Yeah. Basically, just have more capital
credits.
than that corporation, the corporation you're given.
Yeah.
But there's
also the Federalist.
The Federalist, yes.
He's a dirty spy for the government.
Euan.
Aye. And basically, if their whole objective is based around everybody else losing, because what you have to do is get 25 capital.
Yep.
I said credits earlier, I meant capital. When the government steps in, so you basically wanted both of your threat to be at 25 and your credits, your capital to be at 25, and everybody else loses and you win.
Because it is possible for multiple people to win this game as long as the Federalist doesn't win.
Yeah.
As long as the threat doesn't reach 25, basically. Because if the threat reaches 25, everybody loses except the Federalist.
That's right.
As long as you manage to get to the end of the game by playing 6 rounds, then multiple people can win. There's always going to be at least one loser, though, because of the way it's set up.
Yeah.
But it can be a case of, like, if you're playing a 6-player game, 5 people can win and 1 person loses. It can happen. So,
I suppose it could, yeah.
Because as long as you've got more money than the person you're going after, more capital, then you're a winner.
Yeah.
But yeah, so and getting capital is that's when you're trying to skim off the top, basically. That's when you're trying to do things that look like they might actually benefit the city.
Yeah.
But they'll probably give you money as well, and that's where the different corporation powers come into it. So, what were the corporation powers we've got? Because I played as Jinteki, so basically because they make clones, they get money every time disease is removed from the board, because it's seen that they're cloning people and getting curing new diseases and stuff by doing that.
Well, it was a Haas Bioroid where basically any time the androids were moved, which was a strange one, but generally you have to move the androids around to get the resources you need.
And I found that was difficult. Moving the androids was a difficult thing to do.
Yeah,
there wasn't a lot of cards out for that.
And it also generally brought negative effects. And it was with just with the 10 areas on the board, there was a lot of potential for just everything to be knackered, for you just not to be able to get any resources out of anybody.
And it was by the end of your game.
Oh, it was completely
everything was screwed.
Completely humped. I mean, you've got the news network. They basically controlling the media. They can get rid of riots. But again, they're sort of like each one has like an emergency offer, which is almost like a superpower, power of like based on like what the media cards do or whatever their particular card does. So like their one, you could play that and it would remove up to like 4 levels of unrest or rioting across the board, but then put 2 disease tokens down or something like that. It was generally left you with some horrific negative effect. But yeah, it was the security, like global sec. I think it was when you removed
any of the human first or the
organised
crime units from the board, then they would get money. They would get capital.
I'm not entirely sure about what the other ones were.
Well, we didn't play.
Consortium, I'm going to assume.
We didn't play with the Whaling Consortium or with Melange Mining, but
I'm going to assume that the Whaling Consortium involved some kind of development, because that was something that we never actually did in that game.
Oh yeah, we never actually developed any districts,
and it never even really came up.
But I think it was because the way that the corporations that we were playing as didn't really pick up many construction cards.
Right.
The Whaling Consortium get money when they remove outage tokens, or when any outage token is removed.
What about the mining?
And the mining is to do with event cards. If threat does not increase by at least 2, then they gain 3 capital every time an event card comes out.
Oh, interesting.
So I think the Melange Mining are really they're totally anti-government by the looks of it.
I would expect so. It would be strange to play them as the Federalists.
So yeah, I mean that's really how you get your capital, and it's all about capital at the end of the day. So you're trying to stop the city from going into such a state that the government steps in.
Yeah.
But also at the same time trying to get as much money for yourself as you possibly can by trying to convince other people that what you're doing is the best idea. I mean, it is a total negotiation game, because when it comes to playing these cards, when you're making the offers and stuff, somebody can make a counter offer. So by the time you just go around the table once, so there'll be a main offer and a counter offer there, and then the two players that made those offers, they don't take part in the actual voting part of it. So the other players then get to vote one at a time by putting some of their cards from their hands down. So, you're losing cards out of your hand doing this, to vote on which offer they think is the best idea. And now there's also the assets. So every time that when there's offers being made, there's also an asset card comes out, and whoever wins the offer gets that asset card. And that brings another sort of facet into the whole thing, because then you're sitting there going, well, I've got an offer here, and I could maybe convince people to do it, but it's probably not the best offer in the world, but I really want that asset. So, and you can give other players capital, you can, give them other asset cards and stuff to try and convince them to go along with your idea. So there's some pure negotiation going on here, and giving people backhanders and stuff like that.
Dropping a bit of capital.
What you would expect from a cyberpunk corporation,
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, the voting system is quite interesting. Obviously, if one person plays first, if they don't vote, then they leave them, or support one of the ordinances. It becomes a pretty tricky situation. Basically, because if neither of them support either offer, it reverts to the main offer. So it really only takes one person to support the counter offer for that to go through.
Yeah.
But then that's where all the sort of wrangling comes in. People start offering each other things, and and because you only go right, it's not like you go around and bid, and it's just two people. So it's literally whoever goes first kind of has the upper hand.
It is when it's when we're playing with 4 people, we did. I mean, I would
true.
imagine because I really want to play this game with 6 people, the maximum amount, because I feel that that's really going to open up the negotiations a bit more. Because playing it with 2 people did feel a wee bit silly at times. When it was just a case of just somebody's made the main offer, somebody's made a counter offer, the other 2 folk are going to decide which one goes through, but there's only 2 of them.
Yeah.
So like you say, if one person doesn't want to vote on it, the other person basically just gets to choose.
Yeah. So a lot of the time it was a fairly simple decision.
Yeah.
Just because there wasn't too much contention with the 2 people.
I just remember something actually, because you were the Federalist in this game, right? And it was quite clear early on that you were the Federalist. I don't think it was through any fault of your own, but it was mainly because we hadn't played the game before. Nobody really knew how to set their stall out at the beginning of the game. I think you made it quite clear early in the game that you were trying to increase the threat.
I think I recognised that later in the game, sort of how it was quite easy to get the threat level up, and when I was later scrambling for credits for capital to actually get the required amount to win, it was a bit of a challenge.
Yeah.
because obviously I was going to get blocked off at every turn. I couldn't get anything through.
But there was an interesting point in the game where we played one of the other 3 of us played a card that was basically, if you spend 4 capital, I think it was, between all of you, then you could reduce the threat by 2. But then it came a point where you had to go around the table to decide how this was happening, and then the person that made the main offer was just I'm not spending any capital, but we need to get the threat down. But I'm not going to spend any of the money, so you 2 guys are going to have to do it. And it just degenerated into an argument between those 3 people. You sitting there rubbing your hands together, watching these other corporations just squabble.
I don't know what it was about that one, because literally the first time, because that came up a couple of times, and the first time we did it, I was like, well, if I don't go with this, I'm rumbled. But just some point of pride in me went, I'm not putting anything. No, not a chance. I'm struggling enough as it is, and you probably already think I am the Federalist.
Yeah.
So why bother?
We all kind of knew.
Yeah.
We knew you were the Federalist. Although I think we would have really figured
that
it out.
confirmed it, definitely.
Yeah, that definitely
was
confirmed it. But
it was a totally needless move on my part, but
I think we would have figured it out a lot earlier if it wasn't for the fact that Euan was acting really weird at the beginning of the game. And basically it was just a case of that he was trying to make money for himself, not raise the threat. It was just that raising the threat was a byproduct of him being greedy. So
well, as well, I don't think we all cottoned on quite early how the positive and negative effects of the cards, because I think we'd played something similar in It's got a similarity to what's it called now? Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah,
which has a voting.
It's a similar voting system.
That's got more of a cumulative thing with numbers on it and everything like that. But
I think it's the 5 different types of cards that are there.
Yeah.
I think that's what kind of rang those bells for
but
us.
they generally just do something, and it just it's more the sort of the hidden voting that affects like what the spy does. So I think with this game, we just found that it was early on. There was a lot of suspicion on all of us because as soon as anybody played a card, it always had a negative effect.
Yeah,
you were always implicated in something, and for some reason, it didn't. Everybody's assumption automatically went to the Federalists.
Yeah,
even before we knew it was in the game. Like from the very start, I kind of noticed that there was no kind of thinking about, oh, this guy's trying to get more capital than me. That wasn't even entering in. It was just purely right, the Federal.
And that's but you've hit an interesting point there actually, because one of the things about this game is that the Federalists might not be in it.
Yeah.
But you don't know.
Yeah.
Because it's a random draw. So if you're playing with 4 people, you actually put the 4 corporations in as the secret objectives, plus the Federalist card. So that's 5 cards between 4 people. So one card doesn't actually get used.
Just four.
It just could be 4 really paranoid corporations that are just sitting there going like, okay, who's working for the government here? And nobody might be.
4 CEOs just hanging about in a private club, moaning about Federalists. Damn Federalists, call me Pinko.
Right. Okay. So we need to wrap this one up. So
well, I think we've covered all the main points because there's not a massive amount of.
It's not actually that complicated, the game, once you get started playing it. And it becomes, once everybody starts getting piles of asset cards in front of them, it becomes a wee bit more complicated then, because they give you some sort of permanent bonus or one-use bonus or something like that.
Well, some of them are quite good for getting your capital. Basically.
Oh, yeah. And they add a bit more of a flavour to the game, I think. They can really like steer you down a certain path sometimes, just being like, I'm going to do this because that gives me that bonus.
Well, the assets, which probably just before we go, should explain, they are all like character people.
Yeah, they are supposed to be people.
Various, like, because I think I had like a corporate assassin or corporate samurai and things like that.
Silly cyberpunk people,
and they were all based on, I'm guessing, characters from the whole sort of Android.
In fact, I'm pretty sure there are characters in there that have just turned up, and I'm pretty sure one of them had only turned up in that book that I'd read.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, New Angeles is I quite enjoyed this. It was kind of different from a lot of more recent games that we've played, and I actually really enjoyed that. It took us about 3 hours to play through the whole thing.
Yeah, it's not like a proper.
It's not like a massively meaty game, no. And a lot of that was just people sitting arguing over the different deals that were happening. So, good fun. If you like a sort of like negotiation game and you like that sort of cyberpunk theme, definitely go for this. This is a good one. And
it does have the feeling of the kind of like pandemic and stuff like that, just with the trying to sort of keep things together.
Yeah, there's always a struggle going on.
If you enjoy that kind of thing, you might play it and be traumatised by the sheer nastiness of it.
Okay, well that's New Angeles, and that's by Fantasy Flight Games, designed by James Niffen, and that's quite a recent game. That only just came out in the past couple of months or so. I've had it sitting about for about a month, I think, before we actually played it.
It's been difficult to get out.
But yeah, it's a good game. I really enjoyed it. Yeah. Okay, so let's move on. We're going to talk about Damage Report now, and now we're having a bit of a dilemma here. We can't remember if we've talked about this before.
I'm pretty certain we haven't. But then my memory is not to be trusted.
I was pretty convinced that we had, so let us know if we're wrong. But we went back through the episodes that we've done. We can't find any record of it.
I've looked through.
It's possible we've maybe touched on it at some point and maybe not really fully talked about it. So, Damage Report it's a game. It's another one of these games I got through Kickstarter. Yet another one. This is by Break From Reality Games. Now this is a real-time sci-fi game where you're playing as different characters on a spaceship. Now, there's different scenarios in the rulebook, but the general idea is that you're in a ship in space, and for one reason or another, it gets knackered, or something happens to the crew, or something like that, and you've basically got to fix it.
Yeah.
Now, it's like I say, it's a real-time game. You've got a little digital timer in it. it also uses sand timers for the player actions. So you've got a little player board in front of you, which has just got your character on it, and it's got some spaces for your inventory, but there's a bit in the middle, which is basically colour-coded with little circular spaces on it for your sand timer. Now, you use that sand timer, you flip it over, every time it gets into the green section, you can take an action. So you're moving it from circle to circle, but that's going to depend on the life support situation in the ship, which is an interesting part of the game, actually, so I'll get to that in a minute. Yeah. But the general idea of this is that you lay out your spaceship as per the scenario. Some of the rooms are kind of randomly generated, like the corridors and stuff. There'll be random corridors, and they're all the same, but it's the numbers on them that are it's the designations on them, basically, that are randomised. Now, the different rooms have got different functions. Like I say, you've got life support, you've got maybe a teleporter, you've got shields, you've got engines, you've got shuttle bay, stuff like that, like classic sci-fi space stuff that you might find. There are also rooms in the spaceship that have the repair components in. Yeah. So you've got things like, there's nice little colourful beads that you get in the game and stuff like that. So, like, I don't know what they represent, plasma or something. Yeah. You've got strips of metal. You've got microchips, yeah, and there's like another sort of
crystals or
crystals of some description. Just
general crystals,
generic sci-fi crystals. And there's also different tools in the game.
Yeah,
and these are important because what you're actually doing is if there's damage to your room. So the rooms have all got their own little markers that will tell you the sort of repair state of that room. So if we go to life support, for example, it's got a 0 to 100%. And what you do is you go into the room. Each of these rooms has got its own little deck of cards in it. Yeah. You can inspect that room as one of your actions, and then you turn one of those cards over, and that tells you on that card what components you need to fix that room and what tools you might need to fix it as well. And then there'll also be, if you get all these things together, you can put life support up by 20% or something. Yeah. Okay, so there's different varying numbers on all the cards. So you have to then, you inspect the room and you're working together as a team. It's a cooperative game, I should say.
Yeah.
So you've got people who might be running about the ship, picking up different components, picking up tools, and then bringing them to the rooms that they need to be in. There could be somebody in there that's fixing the thing. You know, every time they get to use an action, they can put one thing onto that card. And when it's full, you've repaired it. Now, the life support thing, I mean, I deliberately picked life support there because that is, I think it's pretty much in all the scenarios. In fact, I'm pretty sure it will be. Because life support, the 0 to 100% thing is colour-coded as well, and it's colour-coded the same as the spaces on your character sheet. Now, if you manage to get life support, I think it's above 80%, so is it 90 or 100%?
Yeah.
You can keep your sand timer permanently in the green section on your thing, so it only has to run out once. You flip it, you can take an action. It runs out once, you flip it, you can take an action. If it's below that, so if it's in the yellow region, for example, and that's the next space along, every time you take an action, you have to move your sand timer onto the yellow part of your sheet, wait for that to run down, then put it on the green part, and wait for that to run down before you can take your action. So your actions then become twice as long, and it can get worse. So, like, if life support gets into the red, that's 3 flips. If it gets into the black, that's 4 flips. So it gets pretty bad. If you like, life support is one of those things in this game you really have to keep on top of if you want to be able to like win this game. Like, do not ignore your life support, because that's pretty much one of the most important things. Now, there's also, like I said earlier, there's a timer in this game. Now, it's just a little digital timer. You press start when the game begins. The game tells you how long the game's going to be. I think they're mostly 45 minutes. So a game's only going to last you 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Now, that clock will just keep running. Every 3 minutes, it beeps. And when it beeps, you've got to do a damage report. And the game encourages everybody to shout damage report when the timer beeps. Are we going to do that? Are we fuck? But
I think that's the word we're going to say.
And what happens then is that you draw a damage report card from a deck. Now, the damage report card starts screwing everything over. And there are... That can be dependent on your shields as well.
Yeah.
So you have to keep your shields in a state of repair, because if your shields are below a certain thing, you use one column in the damage report card. If they're above a certain thing, you use the other column. And these damage report cards basically tell you like how much each system is going to go down. So it might be, damage, turn over a damage report card, and that'll say, okay, your shields are at 60% or above. That means your life support goes down 20%. Or if it's below that, if the shields are below that 60%, your life support might go down 40% or something like that. This is why there are multiple things in this game you need to keep on top of.
Yeah.
But that's not the only thing, because each of the scenarios has its own objective. So we played the first scenario in the rulebook when we brought it out the other day there, because Dave hadn't played the game before, and it's a pretty good learning scenario. And our objective there was to fix the warp drive and get the hell out of here. And it took us about 3 goes, didn't it? It was an absolute nightmare we were having.
Well, you have to get up to 100%. It starts at 0.
It starts at 0, yeah, because the warp drive is completely knackered.
Yeah, and every damage report is going to reduce it by a certain amount.
Yeah,
as it's going to do for all of your systems.
And the repair cards for that particular system, for the warp drive, did not put the stuff up very high, did it? It was like 10 to 20%. I think 20% was the most. But because you're trying to keep... In fact, we ended up having an argument about this, because I think you kept running away to try and fix the shields, and I was like, no, fuck the shields, let's get back into the warp drive and get this fixed, but also get on top of that life support. And we ended up just sitting having an argument about it in the middle of the game.
What you realise is you've got to do everything.
Yeah, you do. You have to try and keep on top of everything. Yeah. And that warp drive, because it's only going up 10-20% at a time, if you're not keeping on top of the life support, you're not doing multiple repairs to the warp drive before the damage reports go off, then you pretty much just lose everything that you've been doing. And it's trying to make those decisions as a team about what you're going to fix next and who's going to do what. Because I find in this game that it's a good idea to have someone just running about picking up tools, picking up all the materials, maybe having another person maybe doing a bit of that, but also doing a bit of inspection and repair, and then maybe having one person who's only really focusing on repairs.
Yeah. Because everything you do is going to take time.
Yeah, everything takes time.
Yeah. 15 seconds.
Everything's a flip of that 45. Sand timer. Even moving from one room to the next is a flip of the sand timer. And so if you've got a tool which is sitting in the shields, which is 3 rooms away, and you need it to go and fix this life support before you get absolutely screwed by it, you're going to have to spend 3 flips of that, so that's 45 seconds. Just moving to the shields, and another 45 seconds to come back again. The damage reports go off every 3 minutes, so that's half that time.
Even just like if somebody brings something into a room for you to use because when you have to take an action to drop a thing on the floor, and then another action for the other player to pick it up, and then another action for them to use it on whatever they're trying to use it on.
Well, one of the things is that when it comes to picking up and dropping things, you can combine that with a move action, which is pretty useful. But you're right about basically you move
if you're standing there.
Move into a room and drop something. The person that needs that is going to have to spend an action just to pick it up.
Just imagine what this spaceship's like, eh? Donk.
Well, it's space, man. What do you think?
Everybody just gormlessly looking at stuff on the floor.
It's like, I'm going to walk down this corridor now. I'll be 15 seconds. But should also say that all the characters in the game, I think there's 6 different characters in the game. I may have got a couple of Kickstarter extra characters. Won't talk about those, but the characters all have different bonuses. So you've got like a doctor who can... I think he could replace any one component in a repair with another component.
Right.
So he could use a microchip instead of a strip of metal because, he's a genius.
But a doctor?
Yeah, he's a scientist. I think.
Right.
He's a scientist.
Okay. He's a doctor
of science.
A doctor of spaceships.
Yes, Doctor Spaceship. And then you've got the engineer who can do you can put 2 components in instead of just one every time you take a repair action. Very useful. Pretty much always have the engineer in the game.
Yeah.
There's a robot in the game. Now, the robot is not affected by life support. They always use the yellow section. So that can be both a good and a bad thing. If you're playing a scenario where the life supports are very difficult to fix, then the robot's going to be useful. But if you're playing a scenario where the life support's easy to fix, the robot, don't bother. Use a human.
Use human first in here again.
Yep. All the characters have got their own little sort of bonuses. As far as a cooperative game goes, this is actually... I really enjoy this as a cooperative game because you can't have that... that leader. You can't have that leader that's just telling everybody how to take their turn.
Yeah.
because that's not really that possible in this game.
Yeah,
because it's pretty frantic.
You don't really have an overview of everything that's going
Yeah.
on the board, or like, you know, people kind of. That's the thing, I find myself having an eye on something. But you kind of learn. I find myself having to go, right, I need to check before I do anything. You do find yourself sort of communicating
Yeah.
a lot more as it goes on, and generally shouting at each
Well, yeah,
other.
general shouting, that's what I felt. I mean, this is a bit like, it reminded me a bit like the sort of style of cooperative play in Walkstar.
Right,
where
yeah.
it's basically just everybody's got their own little thing that they're doing, and they're shouting at everybody else to make sure that everything else is happening around them, because, okay, I need this, okay, we need that. But, like...
In my experience, that's how a Chinese restaurant works.
Well, you have. You briefly worked for a Chinese restaurant, didn't you?
I did. Well, I wandered into the kitchen now and again.
Aye, just to watch.
And that's what I saw.
You were a delivery driver.
Everybody, it was, yeah. Everybody was just staring at different things and shouting at each other. When it was much like a spaceship as well. There was a lot of chrome.
What's a chrome?
Yeah, I think it's just health and safety mandated for kitchens and whatnot.
Okay, so back to Damage Report. Yeah, I enjoyed Damage Report. I wish there was more scenarios in the rulebook. There's not a lot of scenarios in that rulebook. I really wish there was more.
I can't judge because I've only played... I think I've only played that first one, because I know I'd played it before, and the layout, from what I remember, because I was like, have I played this before? And then you got it out, I was like, yeah.
Some of the later scenarios are more interesting. There's things where, like, you have to... I think there's illnesses and disease in the ship instead of, like, things being completely knackered, and you have to try and, like, heal some people. There's things that use the shuttles. There's various scenarios in here that kind of change it up, change the game up a bit. I mean, that first scenario is a pretty basic one, where it is just a case of just repair this thing and go.
I thought you'd see other objectives, certainly. I mean, I didn't realise it was always, there was going to be different things.
I mean, the game's essentially the same. I mean, like, when you're healing these people, I'm pretty sure it is just you draw a repair card and do what the thing says. But
you tape them up and get the blowtorch out.
And the teleporter, that's an interesting thing where you can basically just teleport things across the board into various places. It becomes really useful, but you have to keep the energy level up in it. So you have to repair the teleporter every time you want to use it, basically. So yeah, there's a lot of different modules in it that you can throw in. There's a few scenarios in the rulebook. I think there might be more scenarios on their website. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that I have heard that. Okay. But I do wish that there was more in the rulebook, to be honest.
Well, it was a Kickstarter, Chris.
It was a Kickstarter.
You paid money for this.
I'm not saying that detracts from the game, because the game's good. The game's solid.
Right.
I like real-time cooperative games. This is a good one.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's a healthy line, and you've got a few of these of space crisis board games.
Oh, yeah.
Space Alert and Space Cadets.
Space Cadets away missions and stuff like that, and Space Cadets.
They all sort of roughly tread the same. I mean, they do it in different ways, but the general idea seems to be the same, and the way it's played is roughly the same. And everybody just getting frantic and screaming, and time constraints being an issue.
Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I really did actually. It's an interesting game.
It's different.
Yeah,
it's different.
Like I say, I remember when we talked about time and space. I do get a bit frustrated with the egg timers.
Yeah,
just because there's a part of your brain knows you're either going to be losing time now and again just through general incompetence, or through cheating, sort of making up a few seconds here and there. You kind of just want a robot to do it for you. Basically, these games should come with
you want to play a computer game?
An egg time? No, just an egg timer turning robot.
Right.
That does it precisely and makes sure everything's in time.
Thanks, Euan.
Or another bunch of stopwatches. If we're being sensible about it.
Let's not go down that road. I prefer that the tactile thing you get with an egg timer. That's what you want.
Oh yeah. You want to touch a bit of plastic.
And then I like to just stare at the sand going down and think about how I'm wasting my life.
That's why you buy board games, isn't it, Chris?
It is, aye.
to reflect.
Right, let's move on. In summary, Damage Report, it's a good one.
Aye.
Okay, we're going to wrap things up with a game that we definitely have talked about before.
We know we've talked about this.
But we did say at the time, I remember saying this at the time, that we would play it with more people and we would come back to it. Because when we first talked about it, we only played it just the two of us. Mm-hmm. The game doesn't really work with just two people. I'm going to just say that now. If you're going to pick this game up to play with just one other person, I wouldn't bother. Okay, now this is Food Chain Magnate.
So we added one more person.
We added one more person, but it definitely changed the dynamics of the game.
Yeah.
Definitely. Now, in this game, you're running a food chain. It's got some very sort of, what would you say, 50s, 60s artwork style.
Well, yeah, I think probably the thing we ended up probably talking at length most about.
Yeah.
You
were very enamoured with it.
Oh, I do like the aesthetics of it. Yeah, it looks very plain, but it's kind of this 50s inspired with the diners and all this stuff.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, all the blurb is kind of in sort of thematic chat. You know, it talks about our good old-fashioned meals are served with your choice of strategies and take 2 to 4 hours to digest.
Oh, that's nice.
That's the sort of stuff you want. Yeah, bit of ingenuity, bit of creativity put into the box.
So, in this game, let's say you're running a food chain. Now, what you do is, I'm just going to quickly, as quick as I can, I'm going to go over how this game works.
You've worked this one out, so.
So, you've got a map that's made up of tiles. The size of that map is going to change depending on the number of players. So, we played, I think it was a 3x3 tile map. Now, the tiles have really just got roads and houses on them. That's it. Okay, so you start the game with one restaurant, you stick it down somewhere on the map. Now, the object of this game is to break the bank twice. So, there's a limited amount of money in the bank. Once the bank breaks twice, the person with the most money wins. Now, the game's all about creating a management structure. So you start the game with just your CEO. That's it. You've got your restaurant, your CEO. Now, the CEO can always hire one person. The CEO represents you. The CEO's only action that they get to take is they get to hire one person, and they can also have 3 people below them. So, like I say, you're forming a structure. It's like a tree.
Well, they always have to be at the top of your...
Yeah, so the CEO is always at the top.
Lay them out.
Now, what you do is you're hiring various employees. Okay, so there's absolute shitloads of cards in this game that represent different employees. So much so that we had to use a separate table to put them on. Quite a big table as well.
You have to be able to display them.
Yeah, you have to be able to see them all.
Yeah.
And they take up a lot of space. Okay, more space than the rest of the game does, in fact, just to lay these cards out. So you hire these various employees. They can be things like burger cooks, pizza cooks, errand boys who pick up. They go out and get drinks for you. Truck drivers also get drinks. You get trainers, so that's people that can train your employees. You've got recruiting girls who can recruit more people. Discount managers who will reduce the price of things. Luxuries managers who will increase the price of things. Various marketing people. And you can also hire other managers, which something that I did, but quite a lot. So you're using these employees to manipulate the game. So there's 5 different goods in the game. You've got pizza, burgers. You've got 3 different types of drink. There's like cola, beer, and lemonade, I think.
Aye.
So what you want to do is the houses that are on the map, you want to advertise your goods to them. You want to create demand for goods. Okay. So you're doing that using your marketing people and stuff like that. You're also doing things like, let's say, you can lower and raise the prices. You're making food with your cooks. You're gathering drinks with your errand boys, your truck drivers, your such and such. And you're also want to be training your employees as well. Now, when you're creating this demand for things, what basically happens is that you start an advertising campaign using one of your advertising employees. You pick what they're going to be advertising. They can advertise one type of thing. And then depending on the type of advertising campaign they're running, so if it's a billboard, they'll be affecting houses in certain areas. If it's a mail campaign, then they'll affect basically one side of a road, all the houses on one side of a road. If you're running, you've got airplanes that have the big banner things out of the back of them, they just take, because the map tiles are split down into little squares, they can go over a whole part of the board basically. So if you've got a plane that's 5 tiles wide, they'll take 5 tiles across the whole board that they will advertise to. And basically, if the demand goes on the houses themselves. So if you're advertising burgers, you'll put a burger on top of a house to say, the people in this house want a burger. Okay? And then what you're trying to do is, in your restaurant, you are using your employees, you are creating the food or gathering the drinks that they want. Now, the houses will only go to a restaurant that fulfills all of their demand, and that's an important thing in this game.
There's fickle people in this.
Oh yeah, they're very fickle. So if they want a burger and cola and you're only selling burgers and somebody else is only selling cola, they won't go out to get anything because they want both things in one place. So, but if you are making burgers and cola, then they will come to your place. If there is a tie for which restaurant they're going to go to. Then you look at various things, basically the distance away from the restaurant that they are, the price of the thing, and the waitresses will do tie breaks, I believe.
Yeah.
So whoever's got the most waitresses, if there's a tie break at that point, they will get the people in that house will go to that restaurant. Now, I mean, there's a way that they work out. I mean, it's basically you count up various things. I mean, depending on the price and the distance and stuff like that. I'm not going to go into detail about that.
You go through all these factors, and you have to do it for each
factors,
house.
right.
It's probably one of the more time-consuming parts of the game.
Well, yeah,
you have to
going.
Yeah,
right. That's 1, 2, 3.
But like, certainly once we got it built up a bit, there was more houses.
So, this game, I mean, like I say, when we played it with 3 people, it had a completely different dynamic to it because there was 3 people creating demand and 3 people who were making different things, but there was a bit of crossover.
Yeah.
Although with you, your strategy seemed to focus entirely on just making money out of waitresses who got money every round.
Well, as you were just talking about it there, and I remembered something about what happened in our game, and because one of the things, obviously, I'm sure we'll get on to, is the milestone cards.
Yes.
Which you'll get for doing various things, and they go through them quite early on in the game. And one of the ones I got, now I can't even actually... Oh no, I do remember what I got it for. Basically, you can't store any food that you prepare.
Yeah, you can't keep it round to round, aye.
So anything you don't sell, it's just it goes in the bin. I was the first player first and only player to waste any food. I think you might have done one of you might have done in a later phase of the game, but basically, I picked up. There's a reward for that, for the milestone for the first player to waste anything. Is you get a freezer or a refrigerator which will keep up to 10 items, and you can store them as long as you want, basically. And that was a massive... I think that basically allowed me to win that game, because
I think it did,
I couldn't have done it on the waitresses alone, and you were both squeezing me out on price, and I was like, I was just about keeping up, because I had the luxury. Later I clocked, I was like, well, there's no way I can beat either of you on a sale, because it's all, if it goes down to price, I don't have, like...
You can't compete, aye.
It's not a waitress. There were a few early on that I won against Dave, I think, but yeah, it got to the point that I couldn't beat you on price at all. So I was 15. Like, well, the few unlucky sods that do come to my restaurant, they're paying a premium for it. $10 up, right?
But that was the thing, right? So we talked about the milestone cards there. So you get a milestone if you're the first person to do a particular thing. So there's a whole bunch of milestone cards in the game. Yeah. So like if you're the first person to sell burgers, you get a milestone card. You're the first person to put a billboard up, you get a milestone card. And they give you various bonuses. Now, in my notes, I put bonuses in inverted commas because some of these bonuses don't feel like bonuses at times. So, particularly that one where you put the billboard in, which I got, because that's then eternal marketing. So, any marketing campaign you start from that point afterwards in the game is then permanent. Yeah. Which means that pushed me down a certain strategy. And that's what these milestone cards do. They push you down certain strategies. So, like, because I would think I was advertising burgers... that was a permanent thing. I was then right, well, looks like I'm making burgers for the rest of this game, and these 2 houses here that are being affected by this billboard, they're my main customers now, you know. I mean, like you say, you got the refrigerator, so that meant that you didn't have to keep making stuff all the time because you could just store it and then sell it later.
Well, as well, I didn't have to worry too much about the demand thing because it meant that I could be more flexible. And I didn't necessarily have to be making everything every round, but I was like, if I had everything, and there was always going to be that one house I could sell to, or a couple of them. Kept my options open.
But I do like the way that sort of like the way that training works in this game, because like you get various. Obviously, there's various things in the game, like you've got your cooks and stuff like that, but you can upgrade them into better versions. But you've also got things like managers. So like there's about 7 different types of manager in this game. So you can use them as part of your structure, so they can have people reporting to them. Because like I say, you have to make this tree. So you can have like a junior vice president that can have 4 people reporting to him. So that means that you've got 4 employees you can place underneath him to use that round. But you can also then train these people into other things, and you don't have to train them up into better managers. You can train them into other positions, and it tells you on their cards what positions they can be trained into. So there was like various things that we did, like you can train people into making new houses. Like they become like, basically they're making new residential properties instead of being a manager in your chain. Or you can make them into like luxuries managers and stuff like that. So like that was the thing, was raising the prices for you.
I think you had to. Who was he had to promote? I think that was one of the manager.
It was one of the manager positions. I'm sure you had to promote into that. So there's
a variety of
various
things for them.
Yeah, there's various options that you can take when it comes to actually training, and you use your trainers. That was one of the things that I did. I had shitloads of trainers in this game. I was constantly training people, just making them better. Didn't work out for me in the end because your freezer just trumped everything. But
I'm thinking, I keep going back to that, and it's like that
was really powerful.
Yeah, it's strange. I mean, I can see how that would have only gone to one person as well, because you don't often. I mean, in the game we played before, I think we basically avoided wasting any food. Or no, did you get that freezer in the game we played?
Nah, I don't think we did.
Oh, no, yes,
I was wasting food every round.
Yeah,
just about. Because I mean, it's like when it comes to like making things, it's like when your pizza cooks and stuff, your burger cooks, they make a certain amount of burgers, they make a certain amount of pizzas, and if you don't sell them to somebody, they just go to waste. Well, so like I was permanently. It's just the fact is that the way milestones work is that the first person to do something gets that milestone card. If somebody manages to do that same thing in the same round, they also get that milestone card. But if nobody after that round that milestone card is picked up, it's gone. Nobody else can take it. So it doesn't really matter if we were wasting food all the time, because we couldn't get that milestone card anymore because you got it for wasting food, which was weird. It's like, you've wasted food, here, have a freezer.
Well, I think it's just a note of concern, isn't it?
Yeah, all right.
What are you doing?
Is this the government stepping in again, Euan?
Like, we do this the 50s, we do have electricity. You don't need to just make a bunch of burgers and throw them in the bin.
But I found it quite interesting because, like I say, the milestone card, they put all of us down a different strategy. It's particularly me and you. I think Dave kind of flapped a bit at the beginning of the game.
Well, because you were mentioning about the trainers, and I think that was something that I learned from our first, like, just 2-player go at it, that I didn't take a training girl. Because basically on the first turn, you've only got your CEO. You're starting from scratch. So your CEO can hire one person and have 3 people working on them. You don't have anyone at that point, so your first move has got to be to hire a training girl.
Oh, the recruiting girl, you mean?
Recruiting girl, yeah.
Aye.
I cannot see another first move in that game.
But no, but it did, because I didn't do that.
Did you not?
I don't think I did.
I feel like the first time we played it, you did that, and it set me at a disadvantage just in terms of how quickly you can build up that management pyramid.
Yeah. I think because I think I looked at the milestones and just went, well, if I do this thing, then I can get this milestone. Because because I knew you were going to set your stall out to do that. You pretty much told me you were going to do that. And then I was just like, well, if that's what he's going to do, I'm going to do something different and get different milestone cards and stop them from getting them.
Well, I suppose that is the kind of, there's a bit of tension between, do you just build it up?
Yeah.
Because they can be a big help if you get them.
It depends on the kind of start you want in the game. You don't have to have a good start in this game, as you proved, basically.
No.
Because you were slow off the mark when it came to actually selling stuff, from what I remember.
I think I was, yeah, but I focused quite heavily on, and this is by far the best bit about the game, getting all the different employees, training them up and building up that management structure and seeing how that affects the game. And what I was realising quite early on is things like, I found, certainly to me anyway, upgrading the drinks boy or the pizza cook or the burger, it seemed unnecessary. Because if you could build up your management structure more, you could hire as many basic folk on you could be a complete capitalist arsehole, basically. You could hire all the people on the basic stuff to do one of each thing.
Yeah, but
you could get them out.
I think that's what Dave ended up doing.
Aye.
I think Dave ended up having a silly, just like loads of managers that will have loads of people working underneath them.
More junior trainee managers and not upgrading them. Whereas I kind of got them in. And I had I had a vice president. Yeah. You could have like 10 folk working under him.
That's the thing. I focused all my training pretty much on the managers.
Aye.
I just kept training managers into other positions.
If you look at because there's a diagram in the lovely little menu play guide thing, and it does. I mean, you look at this sort of, there is for advertising, for food production, everything, there's a career progression or whatever like that, but it's pretty standard. It's just one thing to another. But you look at the sort of the top tier of it, and it does, like, the variety of different things, ways you can take your managers and everything can be quite startling.
And one of the things, actually, we didn't say, when it comes to when you train people to these higher positions, they start wanting a salary. Because a lot of these guys are free.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of the basic guys, they don't want money, basically. You're not paying them anything.
Well, you're paying them tips or something.
But the problem that I got to was a point where I was... I had so many high-level people because I kept training my managers into other higher positions and stuff that a lot of my money was just going on salary. Yeah. So the money I was taking in for the stuff I was selling was just going again on salary. But then what I ended up doing was I trained one of my guys up to something, I think, where basically it reduced the cost of your wages. It was some sort of financial position. Who was basically, I don't know what they were doing. I mean, what the hell were they doing to stop paying people? It was bizarre. My working force are unionised, by the way.
Oh yeah. Oh, no, I mean, it's not a strong labour movement in whatever this country is.
But games are escapism, you. Games are escapism. Right, well,
yes. I suppose 50's America.
But yeah, I mean, Food Chain Magnate, totally different experience with 3 people.
Oh yeah.
Compared to 2. Even just adding that one extra player just made the game much, much better, in my opinion.
Because it kind of gets you into... Because the big thing I remember from just playing it with 2 of us was that there was a constant... Like, you know, you have the whole rigmarole of working out who's selling to who.
Yeah.
I remember we didn't do a lot of actual sell. You managed to get, like, most of the things in. It's quite difficult with 2 people to get, like, a sort of any kind of dynamism in the game.
Well, that's because there was very little crossover. Because I think me and you were just looking at each other and going, well, if you're going for beer and pizza, I'm going to go for cola and burgers.
Right. And if you were to go, all right, I'm just going to cheekily stick a marketing down the thing of my that like does something I don't have, then I would have done the same thing.
Exactly.
To you.
That's the thing.
It's a cold war.
That's the thing. Like, don't buy this game to play it with 2 people. Like, that's the only advice I'll give you about Food Chain Magnate. But definitely with that third person, I would love to see how it goes with 4 or 5. I reckon it's just going to get chaotic at that point.
No, I'd happily play it again.
What we should say is this game's... I don't know if heavy is the word to describe it. I would say it's
dry.
It's dry and it's long.
Yeah.
It's a few hours, I think. Unless you really know the game and really know what you're doing, and you might actually end up just burning through it. But
well, this is the thing about it, and the more we're talking about it now, I think this is actually one of my favourite board games.
Really?
Yeah. And what I think about it is because it's a pleasure to play.
Okay.
There's no aspect of it that I'm finding like it moves along at a decent pace, and the kind of, you know, you do your structure. And when you think about how it all builds up and everything like that, I genuinely think it's a really great game. But it's not one for youngins.
Oh no, it's no one for youngins.
Yeah, no. It's a good fun game for adults who are happy with dry sort of because it's a very specific art style. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not that it's like just cheap. It has its own. It's going for a certain aesthetic, but it's not like overly colourful or anything, or it kind of like jumps out at you. So you need to be more invested in the gameplay, I think.
It is. I mean, it did. It was kind of a big deal when it came out. There was a lot of people talking about it, talking about how sort of different it was and stuff like that. And also, I mean, I think one of the things that strikes me about it is that the box is kind of weird in the fact that it has this sort of that 50s aesthetic on the front of it. There is nothing on the back. Like this is the first time in a long time that I've seen a modern board game which has no back cover.
Nothing at all.
It's just blank.
Yeah.
That's a really strange thing. I've not seen that since like the early 90s or something like that.
Saved themselves a few dollars on it.
And it's a game that's kind of come out of nowhere, I think. I don't think any of these people have really done anything else. Who's that by, Euan?
Splotter.
Splotter. Well,
there's a picture of an author with a dice.
We've got some designer names.
Now there's a lot of. Oh no, here we go. Game designed by Joris Viersinga and Jeroen Domen, and graphic design by, so this will be the intro, Inzemoet and Iris de Haan.
Cool.
Yeah, so
I think the game's Dutch, by the way.
Yeah, I've done alright with those Dutch names. I'm going to assume.
No, somebody's going to write in and say, "What the hell was that?"
Do you know what? If somebody did, I would welcome it. It would be nice to get some some correspondence.
Right, we need to wrap this episode up now. So that's Food Chain Magnate, one of Euan's favourite games.
I think that's as well what I do like about it. It does feel like a singular... I can imagine that these folk have never made another game, because it feels like something that someone has
Feels like
spent
there's been
a
no
lot
influence
of
on
effort
it,
into.
aye. I mean, I can see that, because it's a totally different board game from a lot of sort of modern games that come out now.
Yeah.
It's a strange one, but yeah, it's good. I enjoy it as well.
I'd just like to play it with maybe more folk and see what kind of reaction it gets.
Indeed. Right, so that was episode 38, your first board games only episode. And we will be continuing this because I feel it's working.
No,
right?
I think it's good. Yeah.
That's my opinion.
Nice wee episodes, and you get a dose of us every week.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not. We'll give out our internet stuff. So our email address is firstplayertoken@gmail.com. We are on Facebook, Twitter, SoundCloud, iTunes, YouTube. That's all First Player Token, FIRST, or the large and unnecessary First Player Token. The exception to that is Twitter, which is @1ST Player Token.
Most once player.
Thank you, Euan. My Twitch username is Unnecessary Chris if you want to watch me streaming some video games. Our website is firstplayertoken.com. We have a Discord, again, ask us for the link for that. And we are part of the Podnose Network,
the UK's leading entertainment podcast network. And
any news?
Catch us on there. No, it's just George very kindly uploaded the episode last week because I forgot to do it on the Saturday. Remind me to do that tonight.
You had one job.
I had one job. Sorry, George.
Okay, that was episode 38. We will be back next week with episode 39, so odd-numbered episodes are now video games episodes.
Oh, so yeah,
Hey,
forever. Until we
forever and
phase
ever.
shift again.
Yeah. So we will see you next week. Thanks for listening. See you later.
Bye.